As China escalates its threats and warnings toward Japan over the Taiwan issue, the risk of another war in Asia is rising. In response to the Japanese Prime Minister's warning that any Chinese move against Taiwan would directly endanger Japan's security, Beijing has intensified its pressure campaign with military maneuvers and sharp diplomatic protests. If tensions escalate to a military level, Japan would require not only US support but also an active role from the Indian Navy to counter China's weight in the Western Pacific. Japan and India have systematically prepared for a potential high-intensity maritime conflict in the Indo Pacific centered on countering the People's Liberation Army Navy's expansion since the early 2010s. Their bilateral and multilateral exercises have been designed with a single strategic objective: to deny China the ability to dominate the eastern Indian Ocean, control the Malacca Strait approaches, and simultaneously threaten the sea lanes vital to both countries. The Japan-India maritime exercise, conducted regularly since 2014, has consistently emphasized anti-submarine warfare, coordinated long-range maritime patrol with P-8I and P-1 aircraft, and subsurface tracking in the Andaman Sea and approaches to the Malacca Strait. These serials directly address the threat posed by Chinese submarine deployments intended to interdict Indian energy imports and threaten Japan's southern maritime flank. Since Japan's permanent inclusion in the Malabar exercise, the scope has expanded to integrated air defense, anti-surface warfare with live missile firings, and amphibious operations that rehearse the defense or recapture of island territories in the Bay of Bengal and Andaman-Nicobar chain. Japan's Maritime Self-Defense Force possesses world-class individual platforms and sensors, but it suffers from limited fleet size, absence of overseas basing, and extreme vulnerability to preemptive strikes on home ports and airfields. Sustained operations beyond the immediate waters of the Japanese archipelago require external logistics and force regeneration that Japan cannot provide alone. The Indian Navy has repeatedly demonstrated its ability to deploy and sustain task groups in the Philippine Sea and South China Sea approaches. Indian destroyers and frigates have transited these areas multiple times in 2024-25, including port visits and exercises with the Philippine Navy at Subic Bay and in the vicinity of Scarborough Shoal. Indian maritime patrol aircraft have conducted extended missions from Philippine and Japanese bases, providing persistent wide-area surveillance of the Luzon Strait and Bashi Channel. These platforms carry advanced active array radars and long-range anti-ship missiles that can engage targets at the outer edge of the first island chain, thereby extending Japan's defensive depth eastward. From a strategic perspective, the United States remains the indispensable high-end partner, but its forces are based primarily in Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast. Full deployment of a carrier strike group and supporting amphibious forces to the Western Pacific requires 10 to 14 days in the best case, and political authorization is never automatic. In contrast, Indian task groups already forward-positioned or exercising in Southeast Asia can reach the Philippine Sea in 3 to 5 days. More importantly, Indian naval presence is perceived across Asia as that of a resident Indo-Pacific power, rather than an external hegemon, reducing the political friction that China exploits in information campaigns. Japan therefore seeks from India an implicit understanding that in the event of Chinese aggression against Taiwan or the Senkaku Islands, Indian naval forces will move rapidly into the Philippine Sea theater to interdict PLA Navy surface and submarine units, protect sea lines of communication, and relieve pressure on Japanese defenses. The accelerating pace of joint training, reciprocal logistics arrangements, and intelligence exchange indicates that both capitals are aligning their operational planning towards this contingency. In operational terms, the Indian Navy represents the most effective complement to Japan's high-quality but geographically constrained force. It provides the mass, reach, and strategic depth required to deny China the rapid victory it seeks in the Western Pacific, making Indian naval power central to Japan's deterrence and defense posture against Chinese coercion.